For the second time, I have forgotten the teacups. And I feel like I have let down all of British royalty, especially Kate Middleton, in forgetting these teacups.
She would never.
She would never. She's a classy lady. She would never. More importantly, speaking of Kate Middleton, is that she is officially in remission from cancer, which, gosh, that feels like ages ago that we talked about her on the show and no one knew where she was and she had disappeared and everyone was speculating about where is Kate Middleton, and then the news broke that she had cancer. It's been a long journey for her, over a year.
I was going to say, when was that?
I know, I don't
It's
remember.
been
It was
more
before
than a
we
year.
went on video. It was before we started doing
Oh,
video.
yeah.
Okay. We were in the old studio,
It's been a
so we
while.
talked about that.
Wow.
It's been a long time. So amazing news for Kate Middleton.
British royalty is having a moment.
British royalty
British royalty.
is indeed.
And we
having
do
a
not
moment.
have our teacups to raise
I
to
know.
that.
Really cheers it. No, we don't.
This just, no, it just doesn't do it. So instead of tea time, it's mug time.
Also, I just
Not
have to say, Kristen, you didn't get the memo this morning.
On
Mom
black?
didn't lay out your outfit.
We're
Tweed
literally
skirt,
matching.
black
Oh,
turtleneck
wow.
situation.
Black boots.
So, the benefit of watching this on YouTube or Rumble.
Dare to be
You get to
different.
see our
Dare to
outfit.
be different. I've got my brown-blue combo today.
You still got the black sweater message.
Oh, is this black? I can't even tell anymore.
Did
J.
you
Crew
think
said
it was
blue.
navy?
Yeah,
Oh.
they said it was navy.
Either
Maybe it's
I'm
not.
colorblind or that's definitely black.
It's probably black. I mean, it looks black. I thought, yeah. Anywho, but that's not the only cancer news from just literally the last hour, I think. There was an announcement that the FDA has banned red dye number 3.
Does red dye number 3 cause cancer?
I was
Yes.
gonna
Yeah,
say
it
I love
causes
that
cancer.
transition because I was going to go, speaking of colorful clothes.
Speaking
Not
of
as
colorful
strong.
clothes, let's talk about the color red.
Yeah.
It's like today's color, Sesame Street. No, so the RFK effect, right, is FDA is finally kind of getting their lives together and listening to the facts and doing some research. They found that red dye number 3 does cause cancer, and they are banning it. Now, you probably are like, what is that even in? And I'm happy to tell
Probably a
you
lot of
that
things.
it's in a lot.
Please
It's
tell
in
us.
gummies. It's actually in cocktail cherries. It's in any canned fruit with like a pink or red syrup.
Dang.
Hence, red dye number 3. So, I mean,
Kool-Aid, I'm
It's
sure.
in like everything. I mean, I just got
Yeah.
back from this road trip and like every single road trip snack.
ooh,
Swedish fish,
yeah.
like Taki, like
Wow.
chips that like hot Cheetos, things like
Yikes.
all of your red colored junk food.
Things we probably knew we shouldn't be eating, but that.
The guilty pleasures in
But
life.
for road trips
Road
every once
trip
in a while, who
snacks.
cares? So yeah, I mean,
too.
but also let's find alternatives for that color. I
But
don't
also
need
like we just don't need to have our food that
Fake
colorful,
colored.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Just leave it as
so I
is.
was just up in Canada for a few days, and the cereal station at the breakfast thing, it's like, you pour it into your bowl, so you see in these clear jars the cereal, and they had Fruit Loops, or not Fruit Loops, Fruit Loops and like Lucky Charms, and the Fruit Loops and the marshmallows and the Lucky Charms are all a little dull as far as their colors go, but it's because Canada has that rule, like they can't use those artificial colors, so the colors aren't as vibrant.
Good job,
But that's
Canada.
like a psychological thing, right?
Yeah.
Like the reason McDonald's is red and yellow is because it psychologically it makes us hungry and crave those like sweet salt fat.
What I'm hearing is if Canada becomes the 51st state, they're already Maha, so like they're not
Already
gonna have.
well, beside their healthcare
We don't want
system.
Canada.
We don't want Canada. No, but food wise.
Sure, yeah, food-wise.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
And speaking of Canada, I will say everyone was really happy that Trudeau was on the
Yeah.
out.
Oh
So,
gosh, yeah. Very, very
Things-
good news for Canada.
very
Yeah.
good news. Things
Congrats,
are looking
Canada.
up. Maybe we'll assume them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be mad.
I'm like, well, I'll take Greenland. I'll skip Canada.
Yeah.
Pass. Well, welcome to Problematic Women. If you are joining us for the first time, thanks for being with us. If you're listening across podcast platforms, thanks so much for joining us there. We also put this full show on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, thanks for pulling up a chair and joining us. I am Virginia Allen.
I'm Crystal Bonham.
And I'm Kristen Ikimmer.
And every week here on Problematic Women, it is our joy to look through the news, to sort through the news, to find those stories that are of specific interest to conservative women, or as we say, problematic women, women who don't fit the left's mold of what a strong, independent woman is. Here at Problematic Women, we are pro-life, we are pro-family, and we are pro-American values. And those are the issues. That's the lens through which we talk about what is happening in Washington, D.C. and across the globe. And today it is all about accountability and this reckoning that is really already begun in Washington, D.C. with an incoming Trump administration, and we have already begun to see this play out in Trump's cabinet picks. So there's this wild world in Washington, D.C. that kick off with confirmation hearings. Even before the president is sworn in, Trump's obviously not sworn in until the 20th, and yet these confirmation hearings have already begun.
For sure. And kind of like we're talking about, RFK effect, there's going to be a lot more of effects. Maybe a Hegseth effect, maybe a Bondi effect. We're not exactly sure who's going to be confirmed at this point, but what we are sure of is that the Senate is in the process of confirmation hearings. And basically the process of that is it could be a few hours long, but the candidate sits in front of particular committees, and then they go ahead and ask them questions. Some of them are, fans, some of them aren't, and basically
some
all
are
of their
questions and some are monologues.
Some of them are going back 20 years ago into college life. Some of them aren't. So what we saw this past week so far, Pete Hegseth, the nomination for Department of Defense Secretary, he was questioned yesterday. Right now, I don't think it's still going on. Maybe it just ended as Pam Bondi for the Attorney General and Senator Marco Rubio for Department of State Secretary. So we've got a lot. This is a part of Trump's promise to have everything ready on day one. There have been a few hiccups with, I don't exactly know why FBI checks, not being ready in time. So some have been delayed, like Doug Collins, Kristi Noem. But yeah, that's what we're seeing so far. And you kind of already alluded to this, Crystal. How was that Pete Hegseth confirmation hearing?
Oh gosh,
what do we think?
It was all fireworks. There were a few times that the entire gallery broke out into laughter, which I just loved. But yeah, I mean, you just see the Democrats on the Armed Forces Committee really coming out in full force in their attempt to smear Pete Hegseth and his background, but also really just try to create this narrative that there's not a problem at the Department of Defense, that because people like Pete Hegseth and others who have spoken up about issues within the Pentagon and the defense complex, that they're, anti-military, that they don't have the best interests of our men and women in uniform at heart. And that could not be further from the truth, right? And you saw that in Pete Hegseth's answer to all these questions and some of the monologues. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys have opinions on this, but
well, I thought it was neat how through it all he kind of kept that through line of I will lead the Pentagon with our troops in mind, number one, first and foremost. And that came through really clear because he acknowledged, like, hey, I don't have the resume that some other folks who've held this position have, but I am a veteran. I have served. I have led veteran organizations. And I thought that really, in one of his responses, he really encompassed, this is my heart. This is why I'm so passionate about holding this position. So let's go ahead and roll clip 2.
Yeah.
Why do you want to do this job? What drives you?
You have 30 seconds.
Because I love my country, Senator, and I've dedicated my life to the warfighters. People see me as someone who hosts a morning show on television. But people that really know me know where my heart's at. It's with the guys in this audience who've had my back, and I've had theirs. We've been in some of the darkest and most difficult places you can ever be in. You come back a different person. And only by the grace of God am I here before you today. I'm doing this job for them, for all of them.
Such a stark contrast to the questions that, I mean, I think if you could sum up what the Democrats were attacking him on, it could be, summarized in one word, and that is women. They used women time and time again. And it's hilarious because if you look at the back of that, he's surrounded by women, strong women that he respects and that he loves and cherishes. So interesting contrast. I love my country. I'm only here because God has allowed it to happen. He's giving up a Fox News job that probably pays well.
Well, I think too, to your point, Virginia, about him talking about his resume, how he doesn't maybe have a traditional background. A lot of the senators brought that up, especially the Democrats who were trying to hark on the fact that they don't think he's qualified for the position. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. And I think Senator Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma brought up a great point. He was like, something along the lines of, well, do you think anyone would have hired Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs as a CEO when they first started their first companies, like probably not. But that's not necessarily a bad thing to bring in an outsider with a different perspective who has worn the uniform. National Guard's a little bit different than full active duty, but nevertheless, he's been there. I love the questions from Tim Sheehy, the new senator from Montana, who got some laughs in the room because of his question about how many genders are there.
Yeah, it's funny.
Too. And he's like, "Oh, I get that because I'm a Sheehy. Like, I get that." I was like, "Okay, that's hilarious." Like
dad joke.
Dad joke. Yeah, I was like, "This is Tim Sheehy's new, right? He had a big upset win in Montana, and so for me, I was watching that like, okay, this is your time to shine."
Yeah.
Retired Navy SEAL, Armed Forces Committee, like Secretary of Defense is a big moment for him. And he just asked really simple, but I think really powerful questions. What ammunition does this standard issue firearm take? How many bullets fit in this magazine? Like just things that normal people would not know the answer to unless they have, experience in that. And I think it just shows Pete Hegseth at the end of the day, when you boil it all down, is a man of the warfighter.
Yeah.
Like he understands them, he's been there, and will represent them well and their best interests in this position. Yeah. Hopefully, if he's confirmed.
Yeah. I think we should roll clip 3 because he was really clear, like you said, Crystal, that he wants to get like all the DEI, all the woke stuff out. And that was one of the other core messages that really came through. And in speaking of being a little bit different from some of his predecessors and having a different approach.
Service members who were kicked out because of an experimental vaccine. In President Trump's Defense Department, they will be apologized to. They will be reinstituted with pay and rank. Tens of thousands of service members who were kicked out.
That is something that the American people, I think, have been waiting to hear of, and something we've obviously talked about a lot on this show. This is ridiculous. So many men and women who have served our country, whether in our military and law enforcement, lost their jobs. California firefighters, because they would not get the vaccine. And to hear that very, very clear message from Hegseth of, okay, we're getting rid of that kind of craziness. That kind of craziness is going to be a thing of the past under my leadership at the Pentagon. It's good news.
It's also popular, right? Like
it's popular.
No one really wanted us to lose one of the greatest armies, navies, air forces, space forces due to COVID. Like that's not ever been something that has caused an army to diminish. And so I'm really excited and hopeful for this new era. That's kind of what we're calling this, right? New era of accountability.
New era of accountability.
Because that right there wasn't necessary. I mean, it was a prompted question for sure, but he's just laying it out there. He's saying, this is how I feel, nothing else. DEI, I love how he also kind of explained the DEI part of all of this and how, kind of going back to my point before, the politics behind DEI isn't going to be tolerated anymore. It's not about equity. It's about having that same core mission that unites them. I loved that because that is what the military has always been about. That's what a lot of, CrossFit, sorry, bringing that up. But that's like
there it is.
Similar kind of idea here.
A
little late today, right? Similar idea. And there are clear differences between the two genders, always in every workout. And it's just a matter of fact that we are built differently. It's not political issue. It's a biological one. So I loved that he was strong, didn't get baited at all. Like these women were
very careful.
People were yelling at him and he was calm, which is what you want in a leader of the Department of Defense.
I think a lot of the attacks from senators about the women issue specifically, they're so hung up on women being in combat roles. And it's like, okay, whatever your personal opinions are on that. Personally, I don't think women should be in combat roles. I've talked to enough, friends and family that have served in the military that are like, yeah, no, we agree with that. Whatever your opinion is on that, fine. But there's a difference between like not wanting women in the military and not wanting women in combat roles specifically. Like these are very different things. And there's many women that fill all kinds of positions within the U.S. military and in our intelligence service that serve well and are great at their jobs and should be there. And we should have more women in positions like that. But specifically when it comes to combat, like this is these are not the same thing. Like
right.
not wanting women in military is not the same thing as not wanting women in combat roles.
Right.
And Heth was clear to come back to the standards on that front to say, hey, we need to have really stringent military standards. We've actually slipped on those. We've gotten messy. It's sort of like, well, you know, you can run a mile. Good for you.
Yeah.
And we, in order to have the best military we can have, we have to have the strictest standards. So if a woman can meet these crazy standards, okay, maybe she can be in combat, but they need to be
few and far between.
Few and far
Yeah,
between.
right.
They have to be crazy strict standards. So the likelihood of, because as we know, men and women are different, the likelihood of a woman being able to meet those standards is slim. And I think people can understand that regardless of what you think about if women should hold combat roles.
I think it just comes, one of the senators made a great point about, it might have been Tim Sheehy, I can't remember. The people that have opinions on this are people that sit in these rooms. He was speaking in first person, right?
Yeah.
These cushy rooms, backroom deal, like negotiating. They're not people who've ever seen combat or who have ever had to be stressed out about whether their life was in danger or not, right?
Make
like they're in very
split-second
comfortable
decisions about, do I save my
situations.
life or my partner's life? Yeah.
Right. And so it's easy to sit back when you're in a position like that and have all kinds of opinions about women in combat and XYZ other things when, you know, there's no threat to you.
You have no idea. Exactly. Exactly. So that confirmation hearing, obviously he took some arrows, but the FBI background check came back with, I don't remember the technical term exactly, but nothing
It's
crazy.
clean.
It's clean. Yeah, he's clean. So awesome news. But there were a few other hearings today. Pam Bondi for Attorney General, so Department of Justice. Obviously, that hasn't been a huge agency of importance in the last 4 years, right?
Casual.
Gosh.
But I don't know if y'all had a chance to watch the highlights of that or anything, but I just loved how Pam Bondi has controlled the conversation in that hearing as well. She kind of flipped questions back towards those that were worried that she might weaponize the Department of Justice. And I just loved how she retorted, like you have been doing for the last 4 years, to the person that's about to take the Oval Office. So she is, definitely a problematic woman.
Oh, gosh, yeah. We would love to have her on the show.
At Pam Bondi.
And then we have Senator Marco Rubio to head the State Department, and he's going to be really a shoo-in. There's a lot of Democrats that are going to vote for his confirmation. I mean, at the end of the day, and he's probably going to be confirmed on day one, on January 20th.
He's one of the easier ones.
He's one of the easier ones. A lot of support, obviously, having been a senator and then going before his colleagues. They know him. They trust him really well. But I think while some of these folks, RFK does face a pretty contentious confirmation in all likelihood. So, while there are some individuals who it might be close, for everything from I'm hearing from analysts, from folks on Capitol Hill, what I'm seeing myself, all of these individuals that Trump has picked are likely to be confirmed. You may have your more moderate Republicans, your Susan Collins, your Lisa Murkowski. It's possible that they might flip, but there's 53 Senate GOP members. So even if two are lost, still those individuals will be confirmed. And then you have Democrats like John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, who has already pretty much said that he's going to endorse Pete Hegseth, and so he's likely to come alongside the Republicans.
And one of the folks that was a thorn in Pete Hegseth's side, Senator Joni Ernst, she came out yesterday and said she supports him.
Fellow Iowan.
You're starting to see, and I think too, there's a lot of bluster leading up to these confirmation hearings. A lot of talking heads in the media saying this, that, and the other thing about all the nominees. But once they really have those hours of time to ask hard questions and dig into things and allow these nominees to really share their vision, their goals, their background, all that, hopefully we'll kind of see things settle and not be too contentious.
Even for those more contentious picks like RFK, Trump picked them for a reason. It's because they're willing to do the work to be confirmed. RFK was in the Senate last week. I ran into him. It was amazing. It was amazing. But he's going to offices where they're, reasonable, willing to hear him out so that he can help them understand, the Democrats can help them understand his agenda and Republicans as well. He's going, explaining, and all of them are doing this. They're all meeting with senators before their confirmations. RFK doesn't have a confirmation hearing scheduled as of today, I believe. But all of these confirmation hearings, this is not the first time some of those senators have talked to them. This is second, third, fourth. And it's because era of transparency. And because Trump knows in order to get people in that first day, like, you got to have someone that's willing to hustle and who's willing to, you know, lay everything out there and represent his agenda. So great work from this potential future cabinet. Can't wait to see.
What are you guys looking forward to in terms of hearings for the rest of the week? Like, who do you have your eye on?
So I will personally be vested in Kristi Noem's confirmation hearing. It was supposed to happen today. She is up for heading Homeland Security, but it was moved to Friday. I'll be watching that. That's a really key position. She's likely to be confirmed. She's also likely to face some tough questions coming as the governor of South Dakota. I'm sure that she's going to be pressed on, hey, are you really qualified to do this job? And I have full confidence that she's going to demonstrate, yes, I am, because of my passion, my experience in not only leading the state of South Dakota, but also she has been really, really faithful to stand with Trump on the order of border security and to stand with Governor Abbott down in Texas on that issue of border security. And that is one of the core missions, obviously, of the incoming Trump administration, to secure the border, to deport illegal aliens. And she is fully on board with that. So I'll be very curious to see how that confirmation hearing goes.
For all the same reasons, Kristi Noem, but also because, but also, in addition to Kristi Noem, sorry, buffering, OMB, the OMB director position.
Russ vote?
Super excited about Russ.
Office of Management and Budget.
Yes, that is the HR, essentially, of the federal government. And I am such a huge fan of DOJ, so I'm hopeful that he'll have some insight on how OMB is going to be helpful to that organization, that, you know, Elon and Vivek. But that, I think, is going to give us such a good view into what Trump has planned to make the government work for the American people again.
Yeah. Personally, I'm gonna just
It's
go
going to
a
be
different direction.
A totally different person.
I'm like, yes, no. I'm most excited about Chris Wright, who's a friend of ours from Texas, oil and gas executive. He's up for Department of Energy.
Ooh, that's a big
I just
one.
think there's so much opportunity.
Drill, baby, drill.
Fracking, fracking,
drill.
fracking.
Let's go. You know, we just had Adam Crum, the state treasurer from Alaska, on Kevin Roberts' podcast last week.
He's awesome.
Yes, we recorded with him, and he was going on and on about, you know, the opportunity for oil and gas exploration and production in Alaska, what it means for our national security, and like having spent so much time in Texas, having that kind of Alaska perspective was different and unique and just fun. So I'm like really fired up about energy and oil and gas right now. So Chris Wright, I'm looking forward to that. But all that to be said, the Senate obviously has been crazy. It's going to be crazy. But there was some big news out of the House of Representatives yesterday. This week? Yesterday?
Tuesday.
Day before? Yeah.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah. Huge news.
The passage of the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, which is something that we've been following forever here on the show.
Really big deal. So what this act says is for any institution that receives federal funding and has sports programs, only women can compete in the women's sports.
Wow.
So novel.
What a concept.
Mind-blowing. So, I mean, it is, it remains wild that we have to have legislation that says this. But here we are. So now that bill goes on to the Senate. We're very likely to pass in the Republican-controlled Senate. But a huge moment on an issue that we have talked about on the show for years, of this fight to protect women's sports. And we've seen a lot of states take action on this. But to see the federal government say, no, across the board, it doesn't matter if you're in the bluest of blue states or the reddest of red. As a woman, you deserve to have the right to feel safe and have equal opportunity in your sports.
Yeah. So it's huge. That was
huge.
Yesterday, Speaker Johnson did a big presser with Riley Gaines and a few other folks. And it'll be, now we have the Sketti Case still. The ruling came down about Title IX, I think it was last week. Yeah. So really a lot of movement in the space, which is great because I'm really tired about saying men don't belong in women's sports.
Can we just all agree and
or
put it in law?
Like, stop.
Signed, sealed, delivered. Let's go.
Can we move on from this?
Well, as everything is nuts in Washington, D.C., we also have massive news breaking overseas with continued negotiations of the hostage deal. And this is fascinating because this ball began rolling when Trump came out in December and said there will be hell to pay if all of the hostages are not released by my inauguration on January 20th. And some of Trump's folks, actually from the as part of his incoming administration have actually been over in the Middle East helping this negotiation move forward. There were reports that Trump's kind of lead envoy on this had a one-on-one meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and really pressed him of like, we have to get a deal. We have to get a deal now. There are just under 100, I think 94 hostages that are still being held in Gaza. 30 of those are confirmed to already be dead, and we don't know. Among the others, we assume that they're alive, but we don't know for sure. So the deal that is on the table that is literally ready to be signed any hour, by the time, for those listening, catching this audio only on Thursday, it's possible it will have already been signed. But this initial deal is to release 33 hostages. These are women, the women that are still being held, as well as the female soldiers that are still being held, those males over the age of 50, children, the Bebas children, and then any men who are critically ill as well. This can all change. Like everything can change so rapidly. Hamas could suddenly say, no,
just kidding,
we're out. We don't want to sign it. And then we're back to square one.
Yeah.
So it's not over till it's over. But the significance of this is you didn't have movement, right? Like we are over and over. There's been rumors of movement. Maybe we're going to get a deal. Maybe there's going to be a ceasefire. Maybe there's going to be hostages released. And then you have this warning issued now multiple times from Trump saying there will be hell to pay. Get ready, terrorists.
Which I love this because nothing makes the left's heads explode more than, we saw this yesterday in the Heth hearing, than them asking, well, are you privy to this plan that President Trump has to end the war in Ukraine? Or, things like this. And it's like, it blows their minds that even just the fact that we're days away from him taking over as president is forcing people to the negotiating table in a very legitimate way. Yep. They can't handle it. They can't. And it's a testament to his leadership, his negotiating skills, and also, what we saw in his first presidency where we had peace.
Yeah.
There were no new wars.
Yeah.
And everyone is talking about how he's a threat to democracy and global peace and what it's like. Actually, that's not what the record says.
Yeah, right. It's what the rhetoric says, but not what the record says.
I like that. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of that rhetoric, in California, they are leaning hard.
Oh gosh,
what a transition!
It's perfect because they have literally drunken all of that red dye in all of the Kool-Aid.
Yes, tie it back to RFK.
Just tie everything together. But while you have wildfires, literally ravaging Los Angeles County, you have the Democrat lawmakers in California meeting to Trump-proof the state. And they have put together essentially a slush fund, $50 million, to fight legal battles against the Trump administration. And they're like signing the paperwork to do this while people's homes are burning down.
Yeah. People are literally losing their lives.
And dying.
And they're like, the actual threat to California is Donald Trump.
Right.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you have, it's so funny, I know I just said it, but Khloe Kardashian was like, there needs to be some accountability, Newsom. And when you have celebrities that don't need to engage politically at all calling for that, unfortunately, the California state legislature, they're not representing the people anymore. They're just trying to get in front of the camera. They're trying to be controversial. And honestly, they're tearing America apart. They are the ones doing it. It was never Donald Trump. It was always the left. And I think people are starting to wake up to that because, like you said, the fire out of hand. There are so many things that could have been prevented, starting with the fact that a week before the fires started, the fire hydrant annual check was canceled or rescheduled or postponed.
Oh, I hadn't
Not
heard
exactly
that.
sure. Yeah, that was out there on X. And I mean, there's just funding was cut from LA Fire Department and just countless other things. And now Biden's like, man, I'm so sorry. Here's $770. I'm sorry you just lost everything you own.
I feel like we just went through this with the disasters in like the Carolinas.
They don't care about Americans.
No.
Well, what is interesting to me with that $770, first off, for the people who really need it, that's not a lot of money. And it just feels like a repeat of COVID. I'm like, okay, are we making sure that the people getting that money are only the people who need it? Because a lot of people have lost their homes, like Paris Hilton, who lost her $51 million beach home in Malibu.
I don't think $770 is going to
like
do it for Paris Hilton.
She doesn't need that. And, hopefully she doesn't take it because she knows she doesn't need it. But it's just this rapid, like, oh, we'll throw some money at it. And it really becomes more of a PR campaign.
And
than
they're going to just automatically distribute it. So she doesn't even really have a choice. If you remember COVID, they just threw it in your bank account, which one is concerning. Why do you have all that information to put money into my bank account? But two, I mean, it makes sense, IRS. But two, like, yeah, exactly. People should opt out.
It's such a waste.
But if we're talking about metaphor, right?
Yeah.
Coming off of Kevin's book tour, he actually talks a lot about controlled burns in his book, which is so powerful. It's this concept, and if you grew up in the Mountain West or anywhere where there's forests, I grew up in Southern California, so we talk about this a lot. But the idea of a controlled burn is like the Forest Service will go and clear out the brush and the dead trees and this and that and do these controlled burns so that if and when you do have wildfires, which are part of nature, like these are natural things. There are trees that cannot reproduce without fire. Like we need fire in our forests. But nevertheless, this idea of a controlled burn is to mitigate how damaging and how crazy these fires get. But building off of that from a metaphorical perspective is when you have a controlled burn, then you have new life and you have renewal and rebuilding. And the way that Kevin talks about it in the book is like controlled burn of our federal government, like go in, clean house, clear it out so we can have this rebuilding of our institutions. And I think California has a huge opportunity now to, after this fire, post-investigation, there's going to be so much that comes out, like in hindsight. The last time when Gavin Newsom was recalled, the election was relatively close, all things considered, for it being California. But I think people are going to have clarity of thought coming out of this situation of change that needs to happen. Yeah. They may not know what that change is or needs to be, but at least they're going to come out of this chaos and this tragedy and maybe see an opportunity for renewal in a state that really has a great legacy. I mean, we got Ronald Reagan from California, and there are a lot of really strong conservatives in the state. And so hopefully they'll be able to kind of grab the reins and rebuild once this all clears.
And with FEMA too, right? There is about to be a new administration. Hopefully Noam is, in charge of FEMA, which is under DHS, and there's a little bit more accountability there. So, Biden may have promised something, doesn't necessarily, I mean, this will likely happen, but I'm hopeful that the responses will be more responsible in the near future, as well as more efficient just for those who have lost their home. Some people have lost everything. And actually, the Daily Signal team was there just last week and captured this perfectly in a video. Can we cue clip 0?
So, what do you think about how the governor, local officials, et cetera, elected officials have handled this crisis?
I was so angry and so hurt to find out that Gavin Newsom cut the fire department budget, the firefighting budget, by $100 million. And then Karen Bass cut the city budget by $17 million, and she didn't even have the decency to be in California when we're burning up. These people are reprehensible, and I can't wait till we get them out of office. And I am so looking forward to Trump getting in, because I think people will be hired based on merit, and they will do a good job.
What would your message to Newsom, Mayor Bass, and others be in this time?
You are such smug, arrogant, ridiculous people. My message is you're incompetent. I don't know why you got elected, but our state is in trouble, and you're not going to make it better, and you've got to go. I can't wait till you're recalled or resign or worse.
Wow.
She's pretty clear.
So there's that.
I mean, in fairness, 40,000 acres have burned in LA. In some areas, the size of Washington, or half the size of Washington, D.C. has burned. So, I mean, she has her clothes and her dogs, which,
that's it.
I mean, that's huge, right? That is a lot.
Yeah.
But, I mean, she has a right to be angry.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, for people who lost their homes because the state was incompetent, because they didn't have water in the fire hydrants, because they didn't do controlled burns. It's funny, I actually thought Dr. Roberts has interviewed Nick Freitas. Yeah, how do you say his last name? So he is a state legislator in the state of Virginia. Oh yeah, follow him on Instagram if you're
He's amazing.
Oh my gosh,
yeah. He's a retired Green Beret. Like he's awesome.
Yeah, my sister, brother-in-law, and I just send his reels to each other all the time. Constantly. But he had this fantastic reel. He was like, actually, climate change did cause the wildfires in California because it was that like fear, this ideology.
It's the agenda.
It's
yeah,
the agenda.
The climate cult.
Where you had water being, instead of it flowing south from Northern California, it was redirected into the sea to save these little fish.
Smelt. The Delta smelts.
Yeah.
Oh, I could go all day about the Delta smelt.
And you have people not doing controlled burns in the name of, protecting the forests and not harming, whatever creatures live there. So it's this agenda that trickles down and is now affecting people like that woman who has lost her home. And many of these people don't have fire insurance. A lot of insurance companies don't include fire insurance in a normal insurance package. And so they're back to starting at square one. I think it's very possible we'll actually see a mass exodus out of California because of this.
Again.
Just don't vote the way that ruined the state.
Ended. Yeah. Well, you have to think too. I mean, these people that have lost everything, they may get some insurance payout in some way. They're $770 from the Biden administration. Great. But like that is not enough to start your life over in a place like California where the cost of living is astronomical.
Yeah.
So now you're forced to gamble and start over somewhere else. Like this is, I obviously left California as soon as I could, and my family did as well. But at the end of the day, like even when you live in a blue state or a blue community, something like that, it's still your home. It's still your community. There's still people that you love and care about.
State,
you want to invest there and like try to change it. But I guess if leaving is the only option, you gotta go.
I feel like it's either going to go one of two ways. Either it's going to be a doubling down where so many of the people that are just so frustrated leave, and California's sort of left to its own far left defenses. Or this is a pivotal moment. This is the moment where things are going to shift. Finally, people's eyes are sort of opened. They realize if we continue on the path that we've been on, there won't be a California anymore. So this could, in some ways, be light at the end of the
It's that
tunnel.
metaphorical controlled burn, right? Like as painful as it is to say it, like we could be seeing a revival in California.
Yeah. There's this was a failure to at other agencies, right? Like this is not just the mayor of LA failed or Governor Newsom failed. It's the housing and urban development, the California housing and urban development failed. The houses were way too close together. They should have known better. EPA, energy, all of those things, just in general, no one talks about HUD, but HUD in this instance was incredibly important. And I hope you're right that they kind of reevaluate, but they don't just look at the leaders. They look at all of those regulations and policies that allowed this to happen.
It's we talk about the woke mind virus, but in this case, it's like the climate cult. Mind virus.
1000%.
And it's on display.
At least the smelter are okay, right? Is that what they were called?
Oh gosh, the Delta smell.
I don't know.
We need to save that for a later episode. I will lose it.
Crystal's gonna do a pop-up episode on that later.
Stay tuned. But
when she has time.
All right. Well, stay with us. Up next, we're going to talk a little bit of pop culture / how it's mixing with politics these days. But if you are looking for another great source of news, especially as everything is about to get even crazier in Washington, D.C., hard to believe that that's possible. But we know when Trump is sworn in, there is going to be a bunch of executive orders signed, laws passed very, very quickly in short order. It's going to be a wild 3 months ahead, y'all. So if you are looking for a great source of news to just stay on top of that in a really easy way, then subscribe to the Daily Signal podcast, because we have something called Top News in 10 that goes out every weekday around 5 p.m. It's just 10 minutes of a really fast rundown of, hey, these are the 3 big stories that happened today, and a quick news flash of, hey, these are a few other stories just to get on your radar. So if you want to stay informed, you want to keep up with the news that you actually care about, that actually applies to you, then check out the Daily Signal podcast, Top News in 10. With that, let's talk about Carrie Underwood making some people
was
mad.
so excited about this, honestly. So a few, I don't know, I guess now, like right after Thanksgiving, right before, I can't remember, we were in Nashville and we shot an episode of The Kevin Roberts Show with John Rich from Big and Rich, like country artist, and he was amazing. Like, he's so fun. He's so amazing. He's going on and on, like showing us his house, his pictures and everything, talking to us about all of the artists in country music who are conservative but are afraid to speak out. Wow. And he was like very passionate about it, which is great. And they talk about it on the show. Little plug, go listen to it. But I kind of let that, slip to the back of my mind because obviously things are busy. We've got other stuff going on. But the other day when I saw the program leak and Carrie Underwood was mentioned, I was like, boom, there it is. Let's go. My girl, like, She's gonna kill it. I'm
She's
so
gonna
excited.
Kill it. Yeah. So if you haven't heard, she's singing the inauguration, and people on the left have just sort of lost their minds. And I think they feel betrayed. I think that they thought that every single celebrity, every
Especially
single musician,
every famous woman.
yes, was in
God
their
forbid.
pocket. God
Yeah.
forbid a famous woman actually likes Trump. And Carrie Underwood's post on this, it wasn't an endorsement of Trump. It was just, how could I say no? This is such an honor to be asked. I love my country. I love America. And it's a time to show unity. And still, the left has lost
Losing their minds.
ever-loving minds.
Joy Behar, our girl.
Yeah.
Just losing it. Like, how can Carrie Underwood? How dare she?
Exactly.
I can't remember exactly what she said, but it's just, they're hysterical.
Yeah. Well, she questioned, it was on The View, and she was like, how could Carrie Underwood love her country if she's going to perform at the inauguration?
She was on American Idol. Her background is nothing like any of these people who grew up in like rich upper society, have been in the
California.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a perfect representation of kind of, I mean, it was already a Cinderella story, right? Like I don't remember where she's from exactly, but she goes on American Idol, wins, becomes this amazing country singer. I dug my key into his car. Like, that is an anthem for some women at some points in their life.
Oh, dear. Don't actually ever do that.
No. I'm just saying that is everyone knows the song, right? Or maybe not. That's a song. Don't actually do it. But I mean, now she's on the world stage. A ton of people are going to be watching her. Like, who would turn that down? I mean, Beyonce said yes to the Super Bowl. I mean, I think Carrie's
born
been
in Oklahoma.
Well, that's what I thought. I thought it was Oklahoma or Kansas, but if I said that like I just did, Kansas and Oklahoma's going to be pissed. But anywho, so, I mean, that would be an obvious yes for anyone, I think. I mean, obviously politics is in play, but again, we're getting past this rhetoric. We're in this new era of just transparency, and we're not putting up with the, I'm not going to use that word, but rhetoric.
Well, but that's the thing, right? And it's like these elitist, out of touch media talking heads in New York City, both coasts, the senators we saw yesterday interviewing or asking questions of Pete Hegseth, they're so disconnected. They're just doubling down, digging their heels in on their, agenda, on their rhetoric, on whatever it is they think is right. In this case, it's just not common sense. It goes completely against everything that is innate to us as decent human beings. But I think at the end of the day, like, the message that was sent on Election Day was elites, like, your time is up.
Yeah.
This is now an America for the American people, for the everyday American, for the middle class Americans that are like the backbone of this country, and not for Joy Behar and her little gaggle of gals on The View.
She's mad because a woman is thinking for herself, and it's not in the way that she wants her to. Like, let's just put it like that.
Yeah.
She's mad about that.
Yeah.
And Carrie Underwood, you're awesome. Always have looked up to her. She's always been a great country singer, has a million great songs. This is going to be epic. This is going to be epic.
It's going to be awesome.
January 20th.
Guys, in less than a week.
I know.
The next time that we are on chatting, we will have a new president. Wild.
Love it.
47, 45, 47. He's coming.
And for anyone who wants to bid President Joe Biden a farewell, and you're watching this on YouTube on Wednesday around 8 p.m. Wednesday night, Biden is giving his final address from the Oval Office. It's really an attempt to define his legacy, what it has been, because people do that right away, and the history books really do that more so than the person themselves. But every president tries to kind of get a last in, hey, this is what, please remember me for this and this and this, and not the other bad things that I did. So you can catch that at 8 p.m. And for us, it's obviously a busy week headed into Monday, the inauguration. Many of us are going to be out there covering it. So we will have a full breakdown and rundown on all the highlights from the inauguration on next week's show.
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be really fun.
Welcome to the new era.
Welcome to the new era of accountability. Have a great rest of your week, guys. We'll see you back here next week as we jump into all things Trump administration.
Cheers.
Cheers.